Hello, lovely Gender Networks people. I'm so sorry I can't be there with you in person. I'm currently leading a female leadership program here in Saudi Arabia, hence why you have this lovely setting of my hotel bedroom. Travel for work, they said. It would be glamorous, they said. But I am really delighted to still be able to bring the news to you this quarter. And because I can't be there with you in person, I have given you a little treat. There is some good news. Very exciting. So let's get going. First up, there is the good news that economists have realized that the studies that kind of talk about how important it would be to business to get more women into the workforce have actually underestimated the value of women in the workforce. So this study looked at the US labor and employment statistics, which talk, actually more on that in a minute, but looks at US labor employment and statistics, which talk about the value that women add. And what they do when they work this out is they go, well, we've got one man in the workplace who's worth, let's say, $100. If we had a woman in the workplace, we'd add another $100. But actually, when we look at the value that women add to the workplace, the fact that we know from research better gender diversity at senior level tends to correlate with profitability. The fact that we know that kind of more junior levels, women tend to work more hours for less pay. That's not a good thing. But in terms of what the value that we add to the workforce, it's actually much, much higher. So adding a woman to your team, better value for money than adding a man. Now, the bad side of that is you're looking at the US Labour and Statistics report. This month, it shows that men have recovered all the jobs lost during the pandemic. So the number of men who lost their job during the pandemic, that number is now back in work again. But it is not the same for women. In fact, women, I think, are still 100,000 jobs short of where they were pre-pandemic. And then I've also got a little article for you about 3 workplace biases which derail mid-career women. It's all the stuff you would expect, the kind of assumptions and the networks. But one thing that stood out for me was that when it comes to appraisals and it comes to talking to women at that mid-career level about their career and what they should be doing to further themselves, women are under far more scrutiny than men are. So when we look at the appraisal feedback that women get, it'll be much more detailed and much more critical than the appraisal feedback that the men get. Because I'm in Saudi today, I thought I would give you an article about how leaders can better support Muslim women. And there's lots of really great stuff in here. So if you are not sure or you feel a bit uncomfortable or you don't really know how to talk about certain subjects, it's a really great article which will help you do that. But one of the things that kind of stands out for me is there's a saying, or there's not a saying about Muslim women, there's a saying actually about autism, but I've changed it for Muslim women, which is if you've met one Muslim woman, you've met one Muslim woman. Don't assume that everybody is the same. Ask questions, get to know your team, understand them really well. It gives some really great examples of how to do that. We've got another article on this key part of parental leave gets left out. This looks at why we spend so much time and effort working out the kind of logistics of the actual parental leave. So how long you're going to take, when your keeping in touch days will be, what we will pay you for that time. But we don't talk enough to women about how we can re-onboard them in a helpful manner. There was an example in this article that I loved, which was a company who, when women come back from maternity leave, they give them a list of everyone who's joined and everyone who's left. So they can see kind of where their network, perhaps they've lost people and who has filled that in instead. So they know who to go to, things like that. There's an article, I think this is from the New York, it's either the New York Times or the FT, it's the FT. The title is, I got mooed at for expressing milk at Goldman Sachs. Some of you might remember this. It's a sexual harassment case that a former Goldman Sachs banker brought against the bank. She has now published a tell-all memoir. If you want to feel good about your job, it's probably worth reading this memoir. Everything is going to seem better. But it's also just a really eye-opening kind of look at a lot of the casual discrimination that women face. It's not all being mooed at, but the kind of little small things that happen all the time that we often just dismiss and we go, okay, well, that's just life, we'll get on with it. But when it's all added into one career, you really start to feel the pain of it. So it's quite a good way of just opening your eyes to stuff that's maybe going on that you're just letting go. And then final serious article, How to Rebuild Social Capital and Improve Corporate Performance. This is from McKinsey, which looked at the impact of COVID and hybrid work on our networks and how important those networks are for our career. And what it found is that people, particularly women who are now working in a more hybrid manner, have often lost out on some of those networks. So it gives some examples of ways you can bring them back and thinking about how you can, I guess, start to prioritize that networking side more in your career. What it essentially really says, and which I really believe, is that we spend a lot of time doing the job and not a lot of time thinking about ourselves and where we want to be going in our career. And most of the time, there's probably less that we could do in the job. And we could spend some of that time actually building our network and putting ourselves forward for the next role. And then finally, just a little piece of research for anyone who's feeling the pain of being back to work after the summer, or maybe you're delighted to be back to work after the summer, I don't know. But if you're feeling the pain, some beautiful research from the US shows that if you're having problems at work, the best way to deal with that problem, go on holiday. That is all from me. Thank you so much for listening. It's been lovely to find these articles for you as ever. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the session. Bye.